Penn State review, rankings for Week 1 in the CFP, and let the arguing begin. All that and more next on Dot in the Eye with Davis and Chad. What's up, Buckeye Nation, and welcome to Dot in the Eye with Davis and Chad. This is episode 31, and we are at an exciting point in the season here. Just coming off a fresh win, 33-24 over Penn State, and this week it's Christmas morning here in America for football fans as this season's first CFP ranking finally came out. And, dude, I am pumped to talk about it. How about you?
Yeah, I'm pretty excited. I definitely think that the committee got a few things right. I think some of the things they did are questionable at best, but we're going to dive into that later. But the first thing we definitely need to talk about is I want to talk about this Penn State game. So obviously we come into this game as an 18-point favorite, and kind of from early on in the game, it felt like it was going to be another one of those Ohio State-Penn State games where it was going to be unnervingly close. We had a handful of things not go our way during that game, but at the end of the day, we still pulled out a 9-point win. So I kind of want to hear your reaction on this 9-point win first.
Well, I got to say that, as we always talk about, man, the Big Ten's tough this time of year. Okay. And especially on the east side of the bracket, there's a lot of good teams, and Penn State's got a really good defense. I will say that I felt like Penn State was prepared for us. I do. It kind of makes me think maybe they were looking a little bit ahead of Illinois, anticipating playing us, because I felt like defensively they really had a good game plan against the run, at least in the first half. It really worked out well for them. I will say that it was a good game. I don't think that it was too terrible on any one aspect of the game. I do not agree with some of the red zone issues and the play calls, and honestly personnel in the red zone. And, dude, just way too many penalties. Way too many penalties. There was a lot of positive things that happened in this game as well. We had Henderson ended up getting his yards, whether or not he got stuffed in the first half or not. And CJ was pretty much as advertised. To be honest, and Jigba kind of continued his little streak here of 6-7 catches every time, just like Wilson. And, dude, we had a scoop and score, dude. Good. It's always good to see a fat guy run.
Big man. Yeah, it was funny. I was watching that thing in slow motion, and I thought they were playing it in real time. But,
dude, I was dying. Did you see him fanning him on the sideline?
Oh, God, it was classic. I mean, they were pouring water bottle down his back and airing him out and everything. It was awesome. And I think that's kind of where I want to start first. I mean, obviously, the offense, we got a handful of things to talk about, but I want to talk about that defense. The only knock I'm really going to give the defense, and I don't even know if it's necessarily the player issue, but I did not like the fact that early on they were picking apart the zone, and we did not change from that. We definitely made some good adjustments in game, which you can definitely see on the offensive side of the ball. But on defense, the one thing I kept scratching my head is why we continue to play zone. Like, if we're not getting any pressure on Sean Clifford, he's picking apart that zone like he's playing a 7-on-7.
Dude, he played the game of his life out there.
Yeah,
he looked good.
He looked good, and he definitely looked a lot healthier than we probably thought he was going to be coming into this game. Because, listen, people don't realize Penn State's better than their 20 ranking. And I know they're not even ranked now, but they're a better team than that. They're a top 25 team still in my head. If you think about it, their first loss was at Iowa when they were dominating that game. And then Sean Clifford gets hurt, comes out, and Iowa comes back and wins by 3. Then, like you said, probably looking ahead, Sean Clifford not 100%, playing against Illinois, and then just couldn't even convert a 2-point conversion in 7 different overtimes and end up losing a stinker, but still could have easily pulled that game out. So you're talking 2 losses with not a healthy quarterback by a total of 5 points. And then we get them when Sean Clifford apparently looks like he got a ton of steroid shots like Justin Fields in the tent last year. In the Clemson game, just got that shot, came right back out, and he was good to go, right? I'm sorry, but Penn State, in my eyes, is a much better football team than people give them credit for, and it showed on the field. It's why we struggled to score in the red zone, and It's kind of why, Sean Clifford, he's a gamer, man. I mean, Penn State over the last handful of years, they've had quality quarterbacks. The problem is they just can't get it all going together and can't get over the hump against Ohio State. So I am probably still one of the few, but I'm viewing this 9-point win as a quality win.
I'll put it like this. Was it a quality win? Yeah, but we left a lot out there.
We
left
did.
a ton out there.
Yeah, we did.
I think, you and I talked about this during the game. There was 2 field goal situations, which you and I kind of disagreed on some about whether you take those or not. That could be another 6 points. And like we talked about, man, all the interior runs that we did down in the red zone, especially in short yardage situations, I didn't understand the call. We kind of got away from running outside. We were running quite a bit of interior stuff that wasn't really working in short yardage situations down in the red zone, and we kind of abandoned the outside run. And I felt personally like we didn't really have the right personnel running that ball down in those situations. I kind of thought that's more of a situation for Mayan Williams, a guy with stronger legs that can push that line a little bit in those short yardage situations. So other than that, it was a good win. Yeah, it was. But, the play calling was a little bit suspect, and I'm going to harp on it again like I do every week. C.J. Stroud had plenty of opportunities to pick up yardage where he didn't even have to take a hit and would not do it again. It's kind of hard to run option type things when there is no option.
Yeah, and I'll give you that. I think he's almost not running at all to a fault. I understand, and I had even mentioned it before the game. I like that he doesn't run. I like he's not taking these extra hits. We're trying to keep him healthy. I think it's important we keep him healthy. But we're not asking him to run like JT Barrett, where he's going to constantly be taking hits, 10, 15, 20 times a game. We're asking for maybe a couple scrambles, maybe a couple of design runs where you set up that, that option where, I mean, how many times did we see he's handing off the running back and everyone's keying in on the running back and he still hands it off anyways? If he keeps that ball, he's got 10 yards untouched. Then slide, get down, or even if you get 4 yards, slide, get down. That sure as hell beats a no gain or a loss of a yard rush by the running back.
There can't be 0% chance you run.
Right. There's got to be that option there, or he's got to learn how to read that. Now, again, this may all be coaching too, where they tell him, listen, don't run that ball. It may look like an option, but you're handing it off. That could be his instruction for all we know.
It could be, but I can't see as smart of a guy as Ryan Day is that would be what he's telling him to do. I just can't see him doing that. Ryan Day's smarter than that. I mean, he probably forgot more about football than we'll ever know.
Right. I get that. But I think one of the big factors, now I think there's a bunch of factors that kind of ended up resulting in why we only won by 9. I still feel like we were the better team. I definitely think that it was a lot more evenly matched early on. I had a problem with the fact that we looked like we were getting beat on the line of scrimmage that first half. We definitely turned that around in the second half and looked a lot better. I'm having more of an issue with some of these little ticky-tack things that kind of swayed the game a little bit. I really started noticing it there at the end of the second quarter when we were up by 10, and they were driving, and we would bring pressure and get home almost until you'd see all of a sudden our blitzing cornerback or blitzing linebacker would be getting held. Obviously, almost tackled to the ground. Yeah, tackled to the ground. And because we couldn't get home, Sean Clifford just picked apart the zone and completed a pass, and they marched it down the field to get 3 right before half. And that was kind of a little bit of a momentum builder because if you recall, right after the halftime, they came right back out, marched right back down the field, and scored 7 to tie it up. And it would have been a lot bigger of a deal if we're going into that 10 or even somehow got the ball back and maybe did something with it before the half. So that was an issue. Not to mention, we kept one of their drives alive. It might even have been that first drive I'm thinking of in the second half with two 15-yard penalty calls on their drive. One of them a late hit when literally it was like, he threw it and the guy pushed him. And it didn't even look that egregious. They called the late hit. And then the other one, Sean Clifford's running and then slides right before Steele Chambers gets ready to tackle him. And, of course, Steele Chambers just sees him lower his body. So in, just a reaction, he lowers down, and they call targeting. There's 30 free yards and 2 first downs we give him on 2 bang-bang plays that, in my opinion, shouldn't have been called. Now, I understand the targeting call just because by the way the rule is written, I guess that technically is. But that's bullcrap, man. I mean, he barely even went backwards, and like he immediately got up and like threw his arms up. Like that rule was intended to not knock someone out, to not injure someone. Like there's no way Steel Chambers was hurting him on that hit. He even kind of let up a little bit. He could have drove his butt straight backwards and didn't do it.
I agree.
So,
but still the thing that gets me, man, is I think in the last 0.3 seconds of that play, he actually bent the crown of his helmet down more, like as the last part of it was happening, just before impact.
yeah, I think that's just
truly
reaction
believe
to
if he
him
wouldn't-
lowering his level.
I'm
'Cause
not
Sean
saying
Clifford
why he
slid
did it.
and lowered his level. Yeah,
I'm just saying that he did it. And I think that's what triggers the call. That's what makes that an ejection instead of a penalty.
and that's a whole nother conversation we'll have for another day about the whole targeting crap that's going on in college. But
Oh, yeah, you go on for hours on that.
But the whole point is all this little ticky-tack ref stuff that we've seen in there. I mean, not to mention people, I know we had talked a lot in the game about why is Olave not getting the ball? Why is Olave not getting the ball? And I seen some footage from other angles, and Olave was getting held like almost every single play. They were playing up on him, forcing him. He'd try to get out of a cut, and they grab his jersey. I mean, there's a few times we've even seen it, and they're not throwing any penalties. But yet Denzel Burke barely touches a guy, and they throw the PI on him. Like, it really – now, I don't ever like being that guy that complains about officiating, but there's no one on God's green earth that watched that game that didn't feel like that was a one-sided officiating call all game.
Yeah, but you know what? There's been a couple times that I can think of, Clemson, that we've had situations like this, and where the NCAA has seen situations like this, but yet nothing is ever done. There is no reprimand. There is no recourse to try to fix the problem. So it's just like, okay, you just have to accept the fact that you got crappy refs. And I hate that.
Well, Ryan Day did say in his press conference today that they did highlight a bunch of plays and sent them in for review to the conference. Now, that doesn't change anything after the fact, but at least, after watching tape and everything, they're well aware of the issues that were happening too. And I can only imagine as a player how frustrating that is, knowing that you've beat your guy and you're getting held and nothing's being called. And so if it's not being called, what do you think the defense is going to continue to do? They're going to continue to hold, right?
Absolutely.
Or the offensive line. If you can get away with that play, hell, I'm going to do it the next play. Hell, I'm going to do it the next play. And the problem is that created more of a problem as the game went on. So then they kept doing it, and it continually didn't get called. But these are all things that added up to it. So if you want to combine our struggles in the red zone with some poor officiating calls, one penalties that killed our drives and extended their drives, and then we're still sitting here at the end of the day talking about a 9-point win. I'm still taking this a lot more as a solid than I think a handful of other people are. Maybe a sure instant reaction is I'm disappointed. I really wanted to beat them by more. I felt like we were that much better, but I think we might have taken them a little bit for granted seeing the last couple games they played, and then you mix all this stuff with it, and that's kind of the result we got. So I'm still excited about the win, and I'm happy about it.
But I think that's more along the lines of the fact because you broke it down. You saw every play. You saw every penalty more than one time. I know I did too. I watched them. So the score is not really indicative of the way the game went. But from a bird's eye view, people on the outside, they're not seeing it that way.
That's true.
They're seeing a 9-point victory.
Especially those people in the CFP. I mean, they're not sitting there analyzing. I mean, there might be a few people in that community that were really into it and really watch all these games. But you had mentioned, off air when we talked that there's a handful of people in this committee that are not really the biggest football people. And they kind of maybe let some of the mainstream media and other people kind of do their thinking for them.
Yeah, I completely agree, man. And, it's just, I think that you have to consider any win in the Big Ten at this time of year a good win. Like I said, I felt like we were just really sloppy, dude. Sloppy all over the field. And yes, the officiating did not help at all. It didn't. But I think Penn State came out with a great game plan defensively against us. I think Sean Clifford played to his ceiling, and I think we just beat ourselves up. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think all those things combined, I'm just happy we came away with a win.
So let me ask you this then. If you had to give I'll start with the defense. If you had to give the defense a grade and I'm talking overall. We can't pinpoint one point, not the DBs, not the linebacker, everything. I'm just saying overall defense. What grade would you give him for the Penn State game?
I give him an A- all day long. Ronnie Hickman was flying around, had tackles all over the place. We looked better. Now,
How
I'm
many
not
sacks
saying
did we get? Multiple
it's
sacks.
like 3.5 maybe or 4.5.
Yeah.
But I thought the defense looked great. Now, was our scheme a little bit jacked up sometimes, like you had
Yeah.
mentioned earlier?
I agree
Yes,
with
but I
that.
don't blame that on the players.
Uh-uh. Uh-uh.
So dude, I definitely I give him an A-.
I'm close. I'm a B plus. I think we're in the general range where we're seeing that improvement, and I think that improvement stuck. We still give up 24 points, but again, I think that's a much better team than what the record shows, and obviously what the ranking is. So, and plus, it's a team. I mean, people say it's not really a rivalry. We have our rivalry, but this has really probably been the closest game of we play anyone in the Big Ten. So this realistically is kind of almost like a new rivalry in the Big Ten. I mean,
Right.
it's definitely the one that feels like it's on the hook for who's going to win the Big Ten East every year. I mean, if you think about it, who's won the Big Ten East the last handful of years? It's been all Ohio State, and that one year it was Penn State.
Yeah.
So,
What
I
about the
mean,
offense?
all right, I'll give my grade on the offense, and I'll give it a B minus. I think we moved the ball. I think we made some adjustments. I don't think it was like a big complete failure like some people felt it was. I mean, I know that we were averaging almost 50 points a game. We still scored 33 and struggled in the red zone. I think the majority of the points I'm taking off is just for that. We settled 4 trips to the red zone to settle for 9 points. Like that's not good. I think if you change those around there, you're looking at potentially a difference of 19 extra points, and you add 19 points to that, and then it's 42-24, and that looks a hell of a lot better, doesn't it?
Well, let me ask you this though, real quick before you go on. You and I kind of talked about this before because we've had this red zone conversation a few times since Ryan Day has taken over as head coach.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you think that this is a coincidence, or do you think this red zone issue is a systematic issue?
I think it's a combination. I'm not going to completely ignore the fact that this hasn't been a tiny bit of a pattern with Ryan Day against good teams. Definitely, he scores really well when he's outside the red zone, but once he gets inside the red zone against quality teams and the field kind of gets squeezed, definitely some of the play calling has been safe at best. I mean, I think you still need to find a way to be creative to make space inside the 20, because when you're going mano a mano like that, you can't just run a basic run play or a basic little short pass play and expect it to be that successful, because they can then pin their ears back and get to the ball quicker instead of having to worry about covering so much space over the top. So you got to be a little more creative. I mean, one thing that he did well, if you keep in mind the red zone trips that we had against Clemson last year in the CFP, was he really utilized a lot of tight ends. And the tight end makes it hard, and that's almost the free space that you have, because you kind of use them as a blocker early. They leave their block, and then they go downfield uncovered essentially, and there's not enough defensive backs and linebackers to cover it all. Just being creative like that. So I definitely agree that I think there's some schematic issues on the offense when we're in the red zone that need to be addressed. It's not just red zone; it's red zone against quality teams. Now, given that's always going to be a statistic that's going to happen when you play a quality team in the red zone. It's going to make it more difficult anyways. But like you mentioned, I mean, 4 trips in the red zone and 9 points, that's not good.
No. Dude, if I had to give the offense a grade, I would probably give it a B- at this point. And that's based on the fact that it took us half a game to really get it together. I felt like, I mean, when your wide receiver has more yards than Travion Henderson rushing the first half, to me, that screams offensive line problem. So I looked at that, and I just felt like we looked kind of unsettled, and Penn State came to play with a good game plan. In the second half, like I said, things changed a little bit, and Travion broke a big run, like 63 yards or 68 yards, something like that,
Yeah.
which is a big chunk of what he did. So we improved a little bit, but I stay with the B-, and a little asterisk there. I know we didn't ask about it, but I give the coaching in this game like a C+.
I can see that.
I felt like Ryan Day, like you mentioned, stayed really close to the vest. and I'm really kind of disappointed in some of the play calling situations. I just didn't understand them, like I said, but it is what it is. I don't get paid millions of dollars to make those calls, so but I give that about a C plus.
Yeah, and before we move on, it was kind of on that point you said there. It was very interesting if you heard at the end of the game when they immediately went and interviewed Ryan Day on the field. His response to their question was something along the lines of, this is not the way we saw this game playing out. I'm glad they're gritty and they tough and they fought it out, but that was really telling when he said this is not the way we saw it going, which means I think they underplayed how good they thought Penn State was, or it seemed like they just were not prepared for struggling in the red zone like they did. And that's just something that I wasn't expecting him to say. You know what I mean? Like, I guess,
well, I
I'm
think it has to do
interpreting
with the
that.
fact
I'm interpreting that as a kind of a negative thing, almost kind of like he almost kind of showed his cards like, hey, I got outcoached a little bit today.
he did, and I'll tell you why. Because I watched a lot of Penn State film ahead of this. When we were preparing for the Penn State pregame and coming down there, and I hadn't watched a lot of Penn State, but I did, and I looked at their defensive scheme. And they're more like a 4-3, 3-5-3 kind of team. But they came out in this game and completely switched it up. I hadn't seen half of the looks they threw out, and I think that's part of what Ryan Day's talking about. All the film that they'd studied on them, that was not indicative of what Penn State threw at us. They were prepared, dude. They were.
Yeah.
I will give them that.
Yeah. So overall, though, I know that you're not as excited about the overall, I guess, the way the win looked, because this is now affecting rankings with a CFP that just came out. My takeaway is still more on the positive, but I think let's go ahead and get into this CFP reveal, because
Give them the top 8, man.
well, I'll do top 10 for you, just because I know we kind of guessed at it a little bit, which really we were way off. I had 2 out of the 10 right, and you only had 1. But okay, Georgia obviously number 1. Then surprisingly, Alabama number 2, Michigan State number 3, Oregon 4, OSU 5, Cincinnati 6, Michigan 7, Oklahoma 8, Wake Forest 9, and Notre Dame 10. So before we even get into any details, what is your overall reaction to just seeing that list?
There are 3 things that bother me. I'm not going to go into detail. I'll just tell you what 3 they are, and then you tell me if anything bothers you.
Shoot.
Alabama at number 2 bothers me. Cincinnati, as low as they are, bothers me. And Oklahoma, as low as they are, bothers me as well.
Okay, so I don't know if I'm going to say bothers me. I agree the Alabama one bothers me. I know part of that is just we dislike them. We dislike the SEC in general, so it bothers us when they seem to get the benefit of the doubt. So it's partially personally motivated, but also statistically, which I'm going to talk about here in a minute. I disagree with that. I'm going to also disagree with, I hate to say it, I'm going to disagree with the Oklahoma one. I guess it makes me happy to see that, but I guess I would disagree with that. Realistically, the rest I don't really have a problem with. That's kind of my 2 big ones. I don't have an issue with Cincinnati being 6, and I'm sorry. I know AP has had them way up there, but if you really realistically look, I know they had some good wins against Notre Dame, against Indiana, who's proven to not be that great this year. And they haven't lost, but the last few weeks, against Navy and against, who was it? Tulane, they didn't look that strong. And those are 2 teams that you would expect a number 2 or number 3 or a playoff team in general to be blowing those teams out.
Yeah, but in that respect, we didn't look that strong against Penn State.
Yeah, but Penn State is a quality opponent. That's not Tulane. Okay, that's not Navy.
You realize that Cincinnati has the number 6 defense in the entire country?
Right.
You realize that?
Right. So,
so
some of it's all relative.
To Cincinnati.
Some of it's all relative against your opponents too.
I know we're going to spend a lot of time, I'm sure, talking about Alabama and everybody else. So let's take like a 60-second blurb and talk about Cincinnati. Okay. I'll tell you why it bothers me. It's not that I feel like the ranking is undeserved. Okay, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that the CFP has taken a stance by making this call. They have made a statement. They have made it in week 1 almost impossible for Cincinnati to have a way in. They've basically told Cincinnati, we don't care that you beat Notre Dame. We don't care that you're undefeated. We don't care if you win out. You're not getting in unless a bunch of other people lose. And dude, that's heartbreaking. We've had this talk before with the little guys, and it's why we talk about all the CFP expansion all the time and how bad I want it to happen because of situations like this. So I'm supposed to sit in a guy's living room if I'm Luke Fickell and recruit him and tell him, man, guess what? You can come to Cincinnati and play football, but no matter what, even if you win all your games, even if you beat Notre Dame, it doesn't matter. You're not getting in unless everybody else screws up.
I understand where you're coming from, and a big chunk of me does agree with you. But at the end of the day, if you don't even pay attention to the AP rankings leading up to this, I mean, who realistically would have had Cincinnati at number 2 if you were just looking at all the teams in the country and you unbiasedly were just ranking them? Very few, if any, would maybe even have in the top 4. I mean, first of all, I'm looking at this almost like I expected this to happen. And I think this is probably the highest a group of 5 team has even ever been ranked in the CFP, let alone the very first one. You know, most of the time the CFP keeps them hovered right around the 8, 9, 10 area where they're not even on the doorstep. And Cincinnati still has a glimmer of hope. So I think that's, if you really step back and think about it, I think they're still in a pretty decent position. I know a lot of people are thinking, oh, the AP had them number 2 and then they dropped to number 6. Dude, take the AP rankings out for a second and tell me realistically, the games you've watched, is Cincinnati a top 4 team? Don't tell me anything about like deserving or anything, because CFP has made it very apparent that they're not as big on deserving. They're more on what they see, what they think is better.
Well, let me ask you this, because this is the conversation I was having. So I look at the rankings, and I know, dude, you're not supposed to do this till the end, really, but I'm kind of doing this now. Okay, so I'm looking at this rankings, and I'm going, okay, do I think Cincinnati can beat Georgia? No. Do I think they beat Alabama? No. Do I think they beat Michigan State? Probably not. Do I think they could beat Oregon? I think it would be a game.
I think that would be a game. Do you think they could beat Ohio State?
I think it would be a game.
I don't. I'm sorry.
I'm not talking about a close game. Dude, if Ohio State plays the way they played last week, beat themselves up like that, we're right for the picking on anybody in this top 10 list.
Well, that's anyone, though. If anyone has a game like that, they're ripe for the picking. I mean, if Georgia comes out and
to be honest, dude,
though, penalties,
Ohio State has been, yeah, but you have to agree with this, dude, no matter what you think. Ohio State has been kind of the Jekyll and Hyde of teams this year.
A little bit. I agree with that.
So
but I think they're still young and learning, man. They're still young and learning. Now,
yeah,
I know what you're going to say.
I know. Learning.
I already knew you were going to go there before I said it.
I was like, God damn, the season's almost over.
I already knew you were going to say that. But listen, it is realistic, and I'm sorry, but with a young team, it is not just a few games and we settle in. There's still growth happening every day. There's still things that are going to need to be improved every day. Now, that's with any team. But most of these starters, these young kids, they've now played 7, 8, games. And some of these opponents that we had played in those middle games there, were not the strongest opponent where they could kind of do what they wanted at will. Now they're having to earn it a little bit more, and it's kind of a different learning experience.
You're right, but take this into account, okay? Not what we have going forward, because we know that Ohio State's schedule has been kind of end loaded. So we know that, ours is coming. But today, as it sits today, Cincinnati has a better win than we do, and they're undefeated.
Yeah. Technically, yeah.
You know what I mean? That's why I think that basically the eye test, however you want to call it, put in quotes or whatever, is a lot of what's used in this thing, dude. They're thinking, okay, like, we don't think Cincinnati can beat Ohio State, so we're going to put Cincinnati behind. Because statistically, if you look at who has the better win, who has the better record, Cincinnati should be in front of OSU if you take it that way.
I think the criteria for picking teams in the CFP is the same thing as the criteria for targeting. Like, it's not always clear cut. It's very subjective at times. You could kick someone out of the game for a very questionable call, and then someone else could really hurt someone, and they could stay in the game. It's really hard to gauge. And, just like Ohio State's a brand and Alabama's a brand, right? And they typically, at least many people think, we're going to get more of the benefit of the doubt. The same negative effect happens for any group that's in the group of 5, like Cincinnati. No matter how good they are, the majority of their schedule is going to be against opponents that they should be beating every time, right? And the quality of opponent that they're playing week in and week out. Like, it gets looked down upon. And it is unfortunate, I agree, because I'm someone that would love to see Cincinnati run it out and get a shot in the playoff. And in my opinion, unless you have multiple two-loss teams, it's not going to happen.
I
And of
agree.
course, that's
I
the whole
know.
thing. Why I strongly believe that we need to go to at least an 18 playoff or more.
I just want it to be fair because I don't think it's fair to make these kids play Notre Dame, to make these kids play all that if they're not going to get the same opportunities as Notre Dame. Like, that's the way I feel about it. I don't know how you can recruit a kid to a school when he's not going to have a chance to play for anything.
Yeah,
Like,
but
that's just
but
it's hard.
yeah, but they're at the point now where they're getting a lot of notoriety, and whether or not they have a shot for the playoffs, I know is one selling point, but another one is just getting more on the national stage. And if you can become a ranked team, you're just like Coastal Carolina. Like, Coastal Carolina is never gonna have a shot ever to get in the college football playoff. I'm sorry. But they're a ranked team, so guess what? They're getting on TV a lot more, and that's notoriety. So if you're a quality player, you can make a name for yourself, and then boom, all of a sudden you can be a household name, especially with NIL deals now. You know, that's a big selling point for these group of fives that I think is a bonus. So I don't think it's always just about, hey, it doesn't matter how good we do, we can't make the CFP. There's still a lot more bonuses with being a quality group of five team that's ranked.
I'm just wired different, dude. I don't want to play checkers unless there's a winner. And I don't want to play football unless there's a chance that I'm going to win.
Well, you
I'm
also
not
got to
playing for
understand too, the
pageantry.
majority of the people that are going to end up joining these teams are ones that these bigger D1 schools are probably not recruiting. It's not all of them, but a vast majority of them. That's why, Ohio State has what 79, 80% of their entire football rosters 4 and 5 stars. You go down to Cincinnati, what's that number? Like
I agree, but
10%?
that's why I'm saying that I think playoff expansion is so important because let's see. Let's find out.
I agree. So listen, let's go ahead and address before we get to the big one. Let's address Oklahoma because I know that's something that you said bothered you. So why do you have an issue with Oklahoma being at 8?
I guess bothered me was the wrong thing to use. I'm just saying these are the
Shocked?
three
Shocked
questionable
that they're that
things.
low?
Yeah,
Shocked that they're that low?
I am a little bit shocked, dude, because in the past, I mean, Oklahoma has been, you know, I don't know
Their
how to
br-
say
their
this.
br- their brand names help them out
There
in the
you go.
past.
They got a good brand name. They've gotten the benefit of the doubt in most cases, in a favorable fashion. And at the end of the day, man, they're still an undefeated Oklahoma. Now I get it, dude. They haven't looked great this year. They've won by narrow margins of victory. Um, their biggest win was at the time a 21 ranked Texas, who's now unranked. But they do have a top 15 offense in the country, which is not unindicative of an Oklahoma team that we're used to. They're pretty much all gas and no brakes, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same point, man, I'm looking at it and, it just seems it seems a little odd, man, to put them behind a one-loss Michigan, who honestly doesn't have a ranked win at all.
Right. And they're proven to be terrible against ranked opponents over I know you're not supposed to take anything past this year, but when they haven't won like any top 15 teams on the road at all.
Yeah,
I mean,
and to tell
they don't look good against ranked teams. Now they look pretty good against Michigan State. And as a matter of fact, I guess one could even argue that they choked that game away because they kind of had it relatively in hand until they got Michigan State's Walker kind of run all over them there at the end of the game. But they still put up 500 yards of offense.
Yeah,
and that's not a typical Michigan offense. So I think that team is trending in the right direction. And I think that's kind of maybe what they're banking that more on.
Well, to be honest, they do have one of the best losses right now. I guess you could say that about Michigan.
Well, yeah, because technically they lost to the number 3 ranked team on the road by less than a touchdown.
Yeah. So I mean, you could give them that, but at the end, I always say this after people say stuff about teams that are one-loss teams. They'll be like blah 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 blah, and I say yeah, blah blah blah, and you lost, and you lost. At the end of the day, like Michigan lost, and Oklahoma's not, and I get it, dude. I get it. They don't think that Oklahoma has the schedule to be up there. I understand that. They still have, like I said, a really good offense, and I get it. Michigan has a better defense, and a 24 ranked offense in the country. So maybe that's what's kind of swaying it a little bit like that. But I just was surprised to see an undefeated Power Five conference, in quotations, team ranked eighth.
Yeah, I mean, I understand it. I am still a little bit surprised they're that low, but I mean, if you look at their overall resume, it's been a weak schedule and they've not looked good doing it. I mean, it kind of reminds me of the Florida State team from 2014 after they won the national title the year before with Jameis Winston in his second year. They kind of like barely skated through their season. They ended up going unbeaten, but what did they do? They got the number 4 overall seed. I
That's
apologize.
true.
I apologize. I apologize. They got the number 3 seed that year. And then what happened in the playoff? They got beat by, 30, 40 points against Oregon, the team that we turned around and beat by 21 in the national title. So
I think what's going to be interesting is how do you think that this CFP committee is going to look at Oklahoma? They do have 2 ranked teams left. Now, they're not top 10, but they're top 15 teams in,
was it Oklahoma?
in Baylor and Oklahoma State.
Yeah. They would have had 3, but Iowa State lost again.
Shocking.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway. So, but
nice little jab there, right?
Nice little jab, little uppercut. But do you think that the CFP committee is going to see them differently if Oklahoma wins all the way out and has 2 more top 15 wins? Does that change the perception, do you think?
I think, honestly, at that point, it probably will. I don't think it's necessarily about their opponents, but there's no way you keep an unbeaten Power 5 team out of the college football playoff, right? Like, that's almost going to be unheard of. I mean, I don't know. I'm just finding it really hard to find that scenario in my head that if Oklahoma wins out, they don't get in.
See, and that's kind of where I talk about, like, we were talking about tonight at work, is that these first week rankings set a precedent, dude. So, like, they put in Oklahoma, undefeated Oklahoma and 8-0 Oklahoma behind 1, 2, 3, 4 one-loss teams.
Mm-hmm.
So for them to go undefeated, now how can you say if these other teams, because they got a lot of people, left on the schedule. We got Michigan State, Michigan State's got us left. Alabama's got Auburn. There's a lot of ranked teams left. So how can you say if everybody else wins their games and Oklahoma wins all their games, they wouldn't be exactly where they are right now? Because you've already said that.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I find some of these rankings shocking. Like the big one that I want to talk about is Alabama being number 2. And I took my time to do a little bit of homework on this one because listen, I don't have as much a problem with like Oregon being ranked above us, okay? And I get where they're going with that because the head-to-head, right? Given we don't have as bad of a loss, but our loss is to them. So relatively speaking, I can understand them keeping us above them head-to-head. They haven't looked particularly strong. We've had a couple games where we weren't at our best, but I mean, I don't think it's any mistake that the general population thinks Ohio State is a better team than Oregon now. But that's not really my argument. My argument is that Alabama is above an unbeaten Michigan State team, and we're not. So what they're doing there is they're essentially saying that Alabama is clearly the number 2 ranked team if they're putting them with a 1 loss against an unranked team at the time they played them. So I went ahead and I kind of made myself a little spreadsheet here, and I really wanted to kind of compare Alabama and Ohio State up to this point, right? And really see where this difference is that this committee is seeing.
Spreadsheet?
Yeah, on Excel. Like,
buddy.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh,
no,
buddy.
Not on Excel. Listen, dude, I got a scratch piece of paper, man. I'm lucky if I have any paper.
So you drew
left.
a tic-tac-toe chart is what you're saying.
Absolutely. Well, no, it's a Venn diagram.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So give it to me, man. What's on this Venn diagram? All right,
so obviously both teams are 7-1. Okay, so first thing I looked at was what is the overall record of the teams they've played, right? Just to kind of get a base of, where are the teams that you've played. And the overall record of the teams that Bama played is a total of 36-28. Ohio State's is 39-30, which are both at 56%. So that's a toss-up right there. Now, the strength of schedule for Alabama is 15 up to this point, and Ohio State is 38. So The games are, I guess, essentially a little bit tougher, but it's, the records are still a similar result. So I'm kind of still leaving that up more to a coin flip, right? So then let's go ahead and look at the best win both teams has. The best win is Ole Miss, who was ranked 12th at the time when they played them, but they're currently 16th. Ohio State's best win at this point is against the number 20 ranked Penn State, who is now unranked. Now you have some people that want to argue that, oh, you got to go by the rankings they were when you played them. Some people want to go by, hey, it's the rankings where they're currently at now. I mean, either way, both teams that both best wins, they're ranked worse.
Which do you think matters? Does it matter more where you are where they're ranked when you play them, or where they end up?
Me personally, I think it's where they end up. But I think people, especially I've seen a lot in the SEC do this, is that they just try to paint that narrative, whatever fits their narrative best. You'll hear them say, oh, well, they beat Miami. Well, Miami was ranked 14th when we played them. But Miami's 4-4. I mean, they're not even a ranked team. Like, you can't count that as a good win. But then they want to turn around and say, oh, well, we, lost to Texas A&M, which I'm going to get to next. The one loss, comparing those. But now Texas A&M is what? Ranked 14th, I think?
I have to agree because
they mix and match how they want to say what their wins and losses are.
I have to agree, stick with one. Even like we were talking about before with Ohio State beating Penn State team that we thought was better on the field than they have been on paper. But nobody else will see that unless they win some games here and get ranked in the top 25 for the end of the season. Then it'll matter.
I still think Penn State can finish the season ranked, and then it would make that look better. But, I mean, I just have an issue with people picking and choosing. But anyways, so
continue on.
So, of course, we're talking about the loss. They lost to Texas A&M by 3. We lose to Oregon by 7, and it really should have been 7 because we outgained them in yards by over 100 yards. But we still lost to them. They were ranked 12th at the time we played them. They're now ranked 4th. So that's looking like a much better loss than the Texas A&M one. And then if you want to look overall teams that were ranked when they played, Bama played against 3 ranked teams, and the ones that they played that are now ranked is 3. We played against 2 ranked teams, and the ones that are ranked now are 2. So if you want to even go back to that Minnesota game that we struggled a little bit on the road with, they've snuck back up, and they're inside the top 25 in the CFP, and they're currently first place in the West Division. So that's looking like a much better win now. Now, of course, we're not sitting here bragging about Minnesota all night, are we? Because now they're ranked, but that just happens to be the case. So if that's the argument they want to go by, we're relatively close. They've played 3 ranked teams and got 3 still in there. We played 2 and we still got 2.
Yeah.
So then I broke it down by, okay, let's look at offense and defensive numbers then, since we're still really close, like neck and neck, in my opinion. Right now, Ohio State leads in most of these categories. Ohio State is number 1 in yards at 547. Alabama is 10th at 494. We are first in points at 47.3. They're second with 45.9. So relatively close offensively. Defensively, I thought it was interesting. Now they got us on this. They're ranked 13th, only giving up 308 yards a game, and we're 50th, giving up 355 yards per game. But they're ranked 31st, giving up 20.6 points per game, and we're 20th, only giving up 19.3. So even though we're giving up more yards, we're keeping them off the scoreboard a little bit better. And then the turnover margin's almost another coin flip. We're +8 on the turnover margin. They're +7. I mean, so nowhere in here do I see a humongous difference that the CFP is claiming this to be. I mean, our average margin of victories and our wins is 28. Theirs is 24. Like, it's almost neck and neck. I almost see these teams being very similar. Do you not see the same thing that I'm kind of seeing here?
So
I mean, the stats don't lie.
So I guess what the point I'm trying to get at is, are you saying that you think that they're just similar teams as far as like where they should be in the rankings, or you think that we should be ranked right with them?
I think if they're moving them up, we should be up. And it's not that I think I'm okay with us being in the ranking where we're at. I really am, because we still have everything in front of us. If we win at our games, we're going to take out a team in front of us, and I don't think anyone behind us should be jumping us. Of course, that Oklahoma one is kind of interesting. If they win out and stay unbeaten, I don't know. But my issue is they clearly bump Alabama up thinking they're that much better when realistically on paper, if you want to look at the statistics and even, if you watch, Ohio State looks like an electric team when they're clicking on all cylinders. I mean, just kind of, I guess Alabama can look the same, but I don't see much of a difference. I really don't.
I'm going to put it like this. I can make a case where Alabama should be 5th. I can make a case where they could be 4th. Because, dude, if you look at it, let's think about this just real quick. You went through all the stat lines for Alabama. Okay, but what we didn't talk about was Michigan State, who has a better win than Alabama and is undefeated in a Power 5 conference.
Right.
Okay, they just beat Michigan. Okay, who's still ranked in the top 10.
Yeah, who's top 7? They're a 7th ranked team.
Exactly, and they're undefeated. Okay, and they still have Ohio State left to play, and they still have a Big Ten championship game with Wisconsin and or Minnesota, whoever ends up winning that. Dude, then you come down to Oregon, who beat us when we were ranked number 3. We're ranked number 5 now. Okay, so we're still in the top 10. They have a better win than Alabama. So my point is, dude, this once again, here we are, and I want to point out something to you. Okay, this is going to blow your mind. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Who is the top ranked 0-loss team right now?
The top ranked 0-loss team is Georgia, isn't it?
Correct. From what conference?
SEC.
Okay. Who is the highest ranked 1-loss team?
SEC.
Alabama, right? SEC. Who's the highest 2-loss team?
Guarantee it's an SEC team. I'm going to guess
Auburn.
Ole Miss.
Auburn.
Is it not Ole Miss?
Nope.
Oh, Auburn jumped them. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And who's the highest 3-ranked team? Mississippi State.
Yeah, that one came out of nowhere.
Yeah. So so what I'm saying is, and by the way, that stat was provided to me by somebody else, by Chaz, who noticed that. But it's a really good catch, dude.
Yeah.
It's very indicative.
So it would be, not that they ever do this, but if you recall a lot of the times when they're doing like the teams that are on the bubble for the NCAA basketball tournament, they'll take away the name and they'll just show the resume. And they'll kind of pick and choose between that. They'll look at strength of schedule. They'll look at quality wins, rank wins, worst losses against what ranked number team, not necessarily specific teams, but just look at the numbers outright like that. And I can guarantee you, if they did that, you're not going to see all these SEC teams up there. And you're not going to see how some of these are panned out. I mean, I think Alabama is really getting by on their name. And I'm not saying that Ohio State's never been the beneficiary of that happening, but I really believe that the SEC is getting a lot of credit in a year where I'm not entirely sure they're the best conference in the country. I mean, I still think they're a really strong conference. They still may be close to the best, but it's not as dominant as it's been in years past. There's no way. There's a lot more parity in it.
That's my point. So you're telling me right now that the SEC is the hardest conference in the world, right? It has to be. Georgia and Alabama are unequivocally better than everybody else in the country. But who's after that in the top 8? 3 Big Ten teams. That's who. 3.
Yeah. So it's been clear that people have favored the SEC and the Big Ten this year. The difference is I think the Big Ten statistically has looked better. Statistically, I think the SEC has kind of been beating each other up a little bit this year. But again, that goes to the whole narrative. Well, you lose to an SEC team, that's a quality loss. Any SEC team you beat, it's a quality win. But Ohio State, God forbid, beats a tough Penn State team, in a tough matchup that we typically have every year by almost double digits, and it's looked upon almost negatively.
For those of you who don't believe in SEC bias and think that we're crazy for talking about it, if that stat that I just gave you about going down the resume of a 0-loss, 1-loss, 2-loss, and 3-loss team in the rankings doesn't blow your mind to make you, I don't know what you're looking at.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I agree. I agree. I think it's ridiculous. I mean, the one thing we have going for us is, have you looked at the strength of schedule remaining? Georgia's, I'm not sure what Georgia's is. I'm not even worried about it. But if we want to go back to that Bama OSU,
they have no ranked teams left to play.
Alabama's
other than the SEC championship.
So here's what Alabama's remaining strength of schedule is: 44th. Pretty weak.
Yeah, they got. They have nobody but Auburn, and then the championship game if they get there.
Yeah, you know what OSU's remaining strength schedule is?
No.
Fourth, number 4. So if they wanted, because I think I even read on Twitter, one of the reasons why they claimed they put Alabama up there was because their strength of schedule. Their strength schedule is 15. Ohio State's 38. I get it. Their strength schedule is a little bit better. But if they're going to hold that same thing true, and if Ohio State keeps winning and Alabama keeps winning, with the strength of schedule of 4 in the remaining games, then that means Ohio State should be jumping Alabama. Would you not agree to that?
I mean, they're not going to do it.
Well,
Yes,
I
agree
just
with
went
you.
down the line and showed how similar these two teams are in almost every aspect of their game. And they
Dude,
claim this is really a strength of schedule issue. So if that's the case, then Ohio State should be jumping Alabama if they went out with this strength of schedule, regardless of how they look.
well, let me ask you this, because this is the question I really want to know. And everybody's like, oh, don't worry about it, Buckeye fans. You control your own destiny. You win out and you're in. Not necessarily. Not necessarily, dude. I'm sorry. Oregon is going to stay ahead of us for right now. They beat us head to head.
For
It
right
is what
now,
it
they'll
is.
stay ahead of us, but I think our remaining strength of schedule would allow for us to finally jump them. I think we realistically should have already jumped them just because statistically we are better than them. I mean, I understand the head to head and I understand that's important and they've made that clear, but I don't
Uh,
see how we don't, if we win out, we don't climb over top of them.
I'm going to tell you how. So if Oklahoma wins out, okay, and they have 2 more ranked teams in the last 4 weeks of the season, and they blow them out, they will be an undefeated conference champion, Power 5. Okay, they're gonna move up, dude. They're gonna move up.
Well, of
Michigan will
course.
have another loss. Michigan State will have a loss because of us if we win out. Okay, so we'll still have 1 loss. If Georgia plays Alabama in the SEC championship game and Alabama beats Georgia, but not by a lot, how far do you think they fall?
Well, I think both teams are getting in if Alabama wins that game. The only way you get one SEC team in is if Georgia wins that game.
Okay,
Even if it's a close game, you're not going to put a 2-loss Alabama team that didn't win the SEC above a 1-loss Big Ten, above an undefeated Big 12,
right. But
and
what I'm
not even
setting you
above
up
a
for is
1-loss
this.
Pac-12.
What I'm setting you up for is this. If that happens, so you agree, Alabama and Georgia are probably in if that happens, right? We know
It's
that.
not even agree. I think that's a guarantee.
Yeah, I guarantee. Okay, so now you're looking at an Oregon team that has us beat head to head. You're looking at us with a 1-loss conference champion, and you're looking at an undefeated Power 5 Oklahoma
For 2 spots.
for 2 spots.
Mm-hmm. And then Cincinnati's still waiting in the wings there too.
Yeah. I'm saying that while I do believe that we would get the nod there, I'm saying it's not as easy and as easy peasy lemon squeezy as everybody's making it on Facebook.
Right. Not necessarily a guarantee that people
Yeah.
think it is. And I'll partially agree to that. I mean, you have to have a lot of things line up perfectly for that issue to happen. Um, but I mean, I'll be realistic. I don't see Alabama beating Georgia this year. I hate to say it, I don't see anyone beating Georgia this year. I mean, I've had a chance to watch a handful of their games. Not the most excited with their offense, but that defense is so stupid good. Like, I mean, what have they given up? A total of 5 touchdowns all year, and they've played 8 games. I mean, they're averaging giving up less than 10 points a game.
Yeah, but let's put it this way. Let's not forget this now. The number 1 defense in the entire country is Wisconsin. Think about that.
I mean, what yards per game?
Overall.
Although I don't even know how they calculate that overall, but I mean, let's be honest though. I mean, Wisconsin's not the best team or the best
Well, they
defense in
have
the
no
country.
offense, but my point is that
They're not the
Georgia.
best. Wisconsin's a good defense. Don't get me wrong, but they're not the best. I'm sorry,
No,
Georgia
they're
by
not.
far is the best.
Yeah, but they have the 51 ranked offense in the country, dude. It's not even
Right,
close.
but that's
They
the thing.
suck.
So, and the other thing too is, how many prolific offenses has Georgia even faced this year? I mean, Clemson obviously was a dud. They've been a
Well,
dud
that
this year.
to me that really depends on how good do you really think the SEC is.
Well, that too. I mean, it's all relative. Now, I still think, even if you're not even playing the best team, still what Georgia's done this year on defense has been really good. It's been almost historic what they've done up
It's
to this
true,
point.
but hear
It
me out
really
on
is.
this real quick. Hear me out. Their 2 marquee wins are Auburn, and UK.
I know.
That's
Yeah,
it.
those are the 2 toughest teams they've played. But
Yeah,
it's
that's it.
also, and I mean, if you really think about the UK game, they only won by 16. I mean, I say only 16. I mean, that's still a really quality win against a ranked opponent. But
My point is, do I believe they're the best team in the country? I do. Do I believe they're beatable? Oh yeah.
I'm not saying they're not beatable. I'm just saying that I think this could possibly be Georgia's year. I think the only thing that, I mean, you're not going to rely upon your defense playing against Georgia because, I don't think Georgia is going to put up a ton of points. The biggest thing is, can you score? And they've not faced an offense that has probably even been in the top 50.
No, they
Like,
haven't.
I haven't even looked up. I mean, Auburn's probably the best offensive team they played.
It's true.
And that same Auburn team lost to Penn State, who is now a 3-loss team. So we want to keep going down that carousel. I mean, their best win is against a team that couldn't even beat the third best team, fourth best team in our division.
It's true. Yeah,
So
exactly. And you know what? Honestly, I don't know do you know who Auburn's lost to?
not off the top of my head, no.
I'd have to look it up, but I don't think I have to look. I think they're still in the hunt for the SEC championship game on their side of the bracket.
So Auburn has beaten LSU. They lost to Georgia. They beat Arkansas, and they beat Ole Miss. So they only have that one loss. So there is still potential that they could get to that Alabama game and beat them and have the tiebreaker to get into the SEC championship game.
Dude, and this is the kind of stuff I love to talk about, dude. Think about the scenarios from that. What if Auburn wins the SEC?
With 2 losses?
Yeah.
God, I'll be
Wouldn't
honest.
that be a mess?
Yeah, because at that point, you'd have to take them over Georgia, but you can't leave Georgia out under the way that how dominant everyone thinks they've been. I mean, I think it's a lock almost unless you're a 3-loss team, which can't physically happen. I mean, Georgia's getting it on one side. It's going to be Alabama or Auburn on the other.
Let me ask you this question because we had this argument at work and I want to get your take on it real quick. Say Georgia beats Alabama in the SEC championship game, but it's by a field goal. How far does Alabama drop, and do they have a chance of getting in?
They have a chance of getting in if Ohio State doesn't win the Big Ten, if Oregon doesn't win the Pac-12, and if Oklahoma loses somewhere down the line. But if you continue to have those things happen, you're not taking a 2-loss Alabama team that doesn't win the SEC over these 1-loss or unbeaten conference champs. I mean, if you want to go back and look at the 2015 year when Ohio State, even though we squandered kind of that year around, we still had probably one of the best teams in the country that year. And we only had 1 loss, didn't get to the Big Ten championship game, and we were left out because the other teams above us all did good enough that they had good enough resumes to still stay above us.
Okay. Here's what
even
I'm
though we
to.
clearly were still one of the best 4 teams that year, and I don't even think it was close. I mean, you look at the players on that team: Joey Bosa. Gosh, I'm having a hard time tonight, but there's a handful of NFL players on that team that year, and the way we were left out, and it's all because of 1 loss. So you mean to tell me Alabama with 2 losses and not winning, with other teams above them with 1 loss or no losses and winning their conference, that Alabama's not getting in with 2 losses.
Let me put you on this one then. Georgia wins out. Okay. Alabama loses a close game in the SEC championship game to Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Michigan State's obviously out because we would have to beat them to get in. Oregon keeps winning. Okay. So now you're at the end here. So now you've got Georgia, Oregon, Ohio State, and either a 2-loss Alabama or an undefeated Cincinnati who's getting in.
That's a good one. So I don't think we won't ever get to that because at some point Oklahoma will probably have something to say about that, either with 0 losses or 1 loss. Because I think a better argument and a more realistic one might be what's up against a 2-loss Alabama or a 1-loss Oklahoma that won the Big 12.
Dude, if I was Oklahoma right now or Cincinnati, I would feel stupid disrespect.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, they've shat on both teams right now. So,
but I think Oklahoma's is rightfully so, though, a little bit. I mean, they've not looked good this year. I mean, look what they did against Kansas. Like that one's almost unforgettable.
But when I look at this, you know what I see? I see that they think Cincinnati would beat Michigan and Oklahoma. That's the way I read it.
I mean, those would be good games. Both of them would be. I'll be honest. I'd love to see that Cincinnati Michigan game. I think
Dude,
that'd be a hell of a matchup.
I think Cincinnati Oklahoma would be a good game.
I think it would too. I mean, I'd be excited about any of those matchups, and there's potential if they
But
stay
you
in the
didn't
top.
answer my question. 2-loss Alabama or undefeated Cincinnati? Who's getting in?
I mean, my head's telling me Alabama, to be
Yeah,
honest
it
with
is.
you.
And that's what I fear, dude. Everybody's like, if Alabama loses again, they're out for sure. No, they're not.
Well, I think they're out for sure because I don't. The question is not whether or not it would be them or Cincinnati because you're going to have other teams in play that would jump them regardless if it would be Cincinnati. I don't see a scenario where it could be between Cincinnati and a 2-loss Alabama.
You don't?
Well, I take it back.
I was going to say, you better look again.
Well, it just it depends. Like Ohio State would have to lose, Michigan State would have to lose.
No, Ohio State would win, and they're in.
Well, okay, yeah, but I see what you're saying. I think every day of the week it's got to be 2-loss Alabama. Has to be. I mean,
and that's kind of what I'm talking about. Like when we talk about this stuff, and people are like, people don't realize that stuff. They see it in their head that they're like, oh, there's not a scenario where X, Y, and Z can happen. There's a ton of scenarios, dude. And we go over this stuff every year. And it's fun, dude. It's what makes college football great. To be able to talk about this stuff and be like, if so-and-so beats so-and-so, who's getting in? Like, that's the fun of college football, dude. That's why I love this playoff system.
right.
I hate how many people get in it, but I love the talking about it. No, but it's just it's just the fact that I think, dude, that at this point in the year, I know you're going to disagree with me. We've had this conversation already. It's not exactly who you beat; it's how you win right now, and I think that we've got to be very mindful of that going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I partially agree with you. I think we're at that time of the year where, especially with us, I don't think how we win is as important just because of the toughness of the schedule. But I think if you do have a weaker, finish to your schedule, like for example, what's one of those teams up there like Oregon? Oregon, I don't know if they're even playing another ranked team either because there's hardly any ranked teams in the Pac-12 right now. Like they're really relying upon style points. I give them that. I don't think it's as important that Ohio State has style points because we're potentially playing, a top 4 team in there, another top 10 team. We have a tougher schedule that I think if we can get through that, regardless of if it's super clean or not, it's still going to give us the nod, especially if, Oregon continues to not look good against unranked teams.
See, I don't know, man. Remember the Big Ten championship game versus Wisconsin?
Yeah, but that was
Why
tough
did we
because
get in?
because LSU. Oh, I see you're talking about back in 2014.
We blew them out as how we got in.
Right. But that's because at that point, that was another finicky situation too, where the Big 12 couldn't establish who won the Big 12. They had co-champions that year.
My point is this: if Oklahoma comes out for the rest of the season and blows people out like that for the rest of the game or for the rest of the season, and they start slowly creeping up the rankings every week because they're blowing people out and we're barely winning, at the end, dude, there's going to be a conversation.
Right, but Oklahoma's always going to have something over top of us, which is a 0 in the loss column.
Exactly. So my point is, much as I agree with what you're saying, I'm saying that still at this point, how you win matters. It still matters, dude. It still matters.
It does. I mean, it's still situational, depending upon where you're at in the rankings on how much it really is important. But yeah, I agree. It still does.
All right. Well, I think we've jabbered on enough about this for 1 week. So what's going on is that we're kind of doing a double little podcast here tonight with kind of the reaction from the Penn State game and also the first week CFP. Just because my work hours are just like up in the air this week, it's crazy. So we probably won't do another episode until this Sunday. Is the plan. So we just kind of wanted to jam all this into one episode so we could talk. Because I mean, dude, I'm never going to pass up an opportunity to talk about the CFP ever.
Right.
I could talk for hours about the CFP.
Yeah, what we'll do in regards to the Nebraska preview is we'll probably just post some score predictions. I mean, we don't need to hit on anything more than I think we're both kind of expecting for a big win. I know Nebraska has probably been a better team than what their record has shown. I mean, they've played some decent teams pretty close this year, just haven't been able to pull it out. But I just I mean, we've kind of had Nebraska's number a lot lately, and I know we do go on the road, but we typically play better on the road. I don't know what it is about Ohio State, but we play good on the road. So
is this Scott Frost last year?
Oh yeah, yeah.
So
I think it has to be. I mean,
I think it does too.
I mean, he's had his attempt there, and he's, if anything, digressed over the last couple of years. I mean, it's just hard. I mean, ever since they made the change to the Big Ten, they've not really been in contention for anything, and they've not even had that one outlier year where they're really high ranked and given a push for the Big Ten championship. Like they've been middle to lower into the pack the entire time, and Scott Frost has just kind of not been able to get them over the hump. So, but I'm expecting that game. We'll get some score previews posted on the Facebook page later this week. So if you want to check out the Facebook page and see what we're posting for those scores, go ahead and check that out.
Yeah. Hey, and thank everybody for checking out the video podcast last week, dude. We had a good time doing it. If you caught my Johnsonville sausage plugs that I was putting in there, I thought that we handled it well. Like I said, we had a lot of fun, man, down there watching the game together and having a few beers and making me look like an asshole. I mean, that's always fun. But we appreciate everybody that took the time to watch it and also, comment on Facebook posts and stuff like that. And, just keep doing it because we really do appreciate it.
Yeah, we definitely had fun. I know this episode's been a little more somber. We haven't really gotten a chance to loosen up, but this one kind of felt serious. That's the CFP. It kind of, I guess, makes everything feel a lot more real. This is like we know we're in the home stretch now. So hopefully we can kind of liven up a little bit on our next episode. Hopefully we're getting to celebrate a big Nebraska win and we can analyze that and then kind of predict where we're going to go from there. So all you got to do is check out the next episode. Hopefully, like as Chad said, we'll be recording that Sunday. Hopefully have it out late Sunday night, early Monday. And then if you hadn't had a chance to yet, like Chad mentioned, go check out our video one. I know it was the Penn State preview, but you cannot miss Chad talking about those Johnsonville Italian sausages. It's hilarious.
Dude, they're juicy. I can't say a lot of words. I know I'm going to get in trouble. They're good.
They're just good.
Yeah.
All right, guys. So, as always, you can always catch these podcasts on all major streaming services. We also post them up on YouTube. Even if they're not our video podcasts, they're still up there in case you want to listen to them that way. We enjoy the support. If you haven't already, check out our fan page on Facebook. Give us a like. We post a bunch of things on there as well. And until next time, guys, go Bucks. OH.